So since building my video game collection, I have been collecting everything from the games I used to play as a kid all the way through my teenage years to where I am today. And through those early 20s was a game called Brothers in Arms Hell's Highway. I love war movies, anything to do with it with regards to series and video games, and I hold Brothers in Arms Hell's Highway in very high regard. But of course I haven't played that game in around 14 years. So I thought it was time I went back and gave it a little go to see if it was good as I remember. We've all played video games we've loved in the past and then maybe revisited them at a later date, only to wonder why we ever liked them. Let me know in the comments, what game did you play, loved it, revisited it and thought, oh actually, what is this game? Let me know in the comments. I'd almost forgotten nearly everything about the gameplay. I just remember having good feelings about that game. The first thing I recognised and realised about it was it felt very reminiscent of Gears of War when it comes to things like the cover system. And it was only when I was doing research for this video that I realised Gearbox are the ones that make it, which of course are the people who make Gears of War. So that makes perfect sense. So already they have a very good basis for a good game. Gameplay wise, it's actually a pretty solid game even today. It holds up really well. The controls can be a little bit funny here or there. For example, you can change them, but in every iteration of the controls being changed, you can't change the way you aim. So in modern day shooters, you hold down L2 or LT. However, in this, you have to click in the right analog stick, and I couldn't change that for the life of me. Maybe I was doing something wrong. That was a little bit frustrating, but eventually I did get the hang of it. As far as the gameplay goes, this game is as brutal as it gets. I think you'll be hard-pressed to find a game that is more gruesome than this in this genre. They do Sniper Elite style kill cams every now and again, which is nice, but the amount of gore in this game is outrageous. The tactics system in this game is fantastic. It gives you more than one way to play the game. So yes, you can run and gun and go by yourself for the most part, and that's absolutely fine and doable, especially on the lower difficulties. But if you want a more strategic approach, you can command your squad, and it works very well. And after a while, you kind of rely on your squad for things like suppressing fire, and when you go to other games after this, you'll be thinking, I wish I had that system here. So with solid gameplay and decent graphics, what is holding this game back? Well, unfortunately, it's the story. Whereas in most places it's a solid experience and you can overlook certain things, it does have very weak plot lines. Certain soldiers will disobey direct orders for love of a good woman that they met 2 days ago and feel the need to trek halfway across Holland to try and save, despite the fact that they're told not to and to get back on the front line. The voice acting is decent for the main characters, the lesser characters, however, a little bit ropey in places.
This one. Don't. Let me save this one. Frankie, don't. Just
Story is very heavy in this game though. The game will take you roughly 4 to 4.5 hours to complete, and well over an hour of that are just cutscenes. So if you're into a more cinematic experience when playing a video game, I would say that Brothers in Arms Hell's Highway is right up your street, because roughly 2 to 3 hours of gameplay is what you can expect. I think one of the reasons I have fond memories of this game is due to a television show. Now let me clue you in. In the game, you follow a squad from the 101st Airborne. You go through missions such as Market Garden, and you drop into Eindhoven and so on and fight your way through. Now if that sounds familiar, it's because it's essentially what happens in the TV series Band of Brothers. As I understand it, the developers of Brothers in Arms took inspiration from Band of Brothers. And of course we're following the 101st Airborne, so the missions are going to be the same. But some of the similarities are just too close to home. They've obviously been taken from the TV show. The first Brothers in Arms game was released in 2005, and that was of course Road to Hill 30. They followed that up with Earned in Blood just 7 months later. Some of the deaths in Hell's Highway will have more significance to you had you played 1 or 2 of the previous games. I'm not necessarily saying that's a bad thing, because even in TV shows and films they do that where they kill off legacy characters, for example, and if you haven't seen the originals it won't really mean an awful lot. But of course it's there for the people who have played those games. But to be fair, all in all, it's not a bad gaming experience. This was released in 2008, we're now in 2023, this console is 3 generations behind, and it still holds up quite well. It does suffer from some stutters in gameplay, but for the most part, it's a very solid experience. If you can overlook some terrible storytelling in places and some questionable acting, then I think this could be a game that you would enjoy going back to. Specifically, of course, if you're interested in World War II and, of course, if you have seen Band of Brothers but have never played Brothers in Arms. That's for me where it shines, because the music is very reminiscent of that series, and it kind of reminds me of that. It's for people who want more Band of Brothers, but that don't have more Band of Brothers. I still hold it in very high regard, even though it has dropped very slightly in my estimation based on the storytelling that I didn't really notice first time round because I was more focused on the gameplay. If you want to see a video from my series, you can click here, and until the next time, goodbye.